incident was about to take place that would shake the foundations of the civilized world.
It is time to open your mind. Time to discover your divine self as we navigate this holographic matrix together. Strap in, cosmic family, as we slide through this wormhole of cosmic information together in search of the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
It's time to go inside the matrix.
Inside the Matrix.
With your host, Jimmy Brent.
All right, welcome to Inside the Matrix. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day today. And my special guest is Shane Bales. Shane is a former Illuminati member and is known online as The Ruiner from his blog. He is a speaker, author, singer, and songwriter with knowledge from experience within mystery schools and secret programs. Using alchemy, he turned his experiences into teaching others how to harness and control their own personal power, as well as how to tap into the energies of creation. Shane, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Okay, we had a few glitches before, but I think we're rolling along just fine now, and I'm glad that's behind us. But anyway, I always start out with our new guests, asking them to kind of give us a background story, sort of where you came from, how you were raised, what got you to where you are today.
Well, I was born into an Illuminati family, as people like to call them. A couple of them, actually, both sides of my family. So by the time I was 4, I was raised within what I call the programs, projects, and cults that people like to call the Illuminati have put together. Just means that I was involved with a lot of different rituals and mystery schools, as they're called, where I was given the education of various esoteric topics that have been occulted from mainstream education systems. And along the way, got to see a lot of things that most people don't see. So that's most of it. I wrote a blog, and the alternative community found out who I was, and I decided to take that and use it to teach people how to decipher all of this various information that comes flying around in this community.
Yeah, and nowadays the information is coming to us fast and furious, as they say, and really it's like a huge fire hose that's been turned on. I like to think of it, because everything is literally being exposed now. Now, when you first came out with your blog, my understanding is that you were mainly trying to communicate with other people who had similar situations to yours. Is that true?
Yeah, it started off as I was sending out a lot of emails just to people that, had experienced the same things I had, that I knew personally. And it got to the point where there was just too many of them to keep, sending 13 emails a day was a little bit much for me. So one of them had actually come up with the idea for me to write it in a blog form and post it somewhere that they could all see it. And, I figured no big deal. I would stylize it a little bit, throw it up on the internet. They could all read it. They would understand it. No one else would ever see it, because it's not like I was advertising it. And,
right.
And that would work fine. But then people found it. So next thing, the audience
went viral too. It went viral.
It sure did. I woke up one morning and email box was full, and all kinds of phone calls that I was missing and things like this from people who did know me but had watched this kind of blow up overnight all over one thing I had written. So it was interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the huge amount of interest comes from, many of our listeners and most people would be aware that there are these secret societies and groups operating, right under our noses everywhere. And I imagine that, the people in these organizations don't refer to themselves the way, pop culture has come to name them, such as the Illuminati and that kind of thing. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. We've got lots of names wrong. That's it's kind of something I'm semi-famous for saying is names, 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 and that's because people put a lot of value into it when there's not. And, that word Illuminati came from a group that called themselves that was absorbed by the bigger umbrella that is now understood as the Illuminati. Mm-hmm. But their name is something very different. And it varies from language to language and region to region. So it's not as important as people think to be able to pull off a name. Something we've kind of been taught through pop culture actually is that it's really important, but it's not as important as we seem to think that it is. What is important is just the acknowledgement of, the group or the cult or the program or the project. Mm-hmm. And people pretty much can identify each other having been in them, right? Like, it's very rare that someone could come to you and say, "Oh, I was in that too," and you would believe them and they were lying to you, because it shapes you, it changes you, and it's pretty identifiable in someone's character, I believe, if they've actually survived these things.
Yeah, and I would think that not a lot of people like yourself would have survived, and especially if they did survive, they're probably still being manipulated in some way or fashion, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, they've always got some type of thumb on you, but getting out of it is very difficult. You have to run through a lot of hoops and do a lot of different stuff. It takes a very long time. It's not as simple as just being like, "Hey, I quit." And they're like, "Okay, so you." It's too much at that point, right? Exactly. There's a period of time in which you have to kind of prove to them that you can keep your mouth shut about the right things and follow certain rules. I've been quite open about what mine are. I can't tell people locations of certain sites or names of certain people who are running certain things, because that might cause them to go after those people, and that would be bad for those people. So and you, right? Well, I mean, breaking a rule at this point would be what it is. I've done what I needed to do to make sure that everything is safe. There's nothing I could do left, right, except for help other people figure it out for themselves, and that's not against their rules. They put all the information out there so that you can figure it out. It's just I remember one person telling me that what I did with my blog was write a skeleton key for people to decode all the information that was floating around at the time. And that's what I continue to try and do is, there's a lot of different concepts that are correct that are caught up in names and terminologies that are incorrect, and that can lead people down rabbit holes they don't need to go down. So I do my best to try and help people avoid those rabbit holes. Shane, I got to tell you, I have the highest respect for you for having the courage to come out and do what you do, because it's extremely rare. And as we said before, that's probably why there's such a great interest in you, because you've actually, gone through that and survived and you lived to tell about it, so to speak, and you're no longer active in that. Can you give us an idea of what, say you're born into one of these families, what happens in your childhood? What do you have to endure and go through, and why? It would depend, obviously, on the family itself. It would depend on your situation, your status within that family and stuff. So ritual abuse is pretty much a staple. That starts when you're really young. Some type of programming in terms of behavior adjustment or modification attempts are made in order to keep. They pretty much know what they want you to do since you're very young, right? So they start grooming you for that right away. The reason why the abuse tends to be a staple is just because it's kind of their best way of getting us to follow, to obey, to become impressionable by them. And then from there, it all depends on what they want you for. The level of projects is pretty standard. It usually means something within the community, like something at the celebrity level or politics level, or police chief or something like that is what they're grooming you for. Within the cults, they're focused more on psychology and spirituality in terms of religions and things of that nature. And then when you get into the programs, that's when you get into the really black project stuff that they don't like people talking about, because it's all experimenting with human behavior modification, human potential modification, various types of cloning experiments, all that type of stuff goes on in the programs. So yeah.
Okay. Now, a lot of people talk about the Nazis and Operation Paperclip, where thousands of former Nazis after World War II were brought over to the United States to work in, first of all, to form the CIA, to form NASA, and to work in a lot of the most sensitive areas of our country. And where does something like that fit into this? Because I know the organization that we're talking about is far, far bigger than that. Was this just one of their operations during the 20th century, the whole Nazi thing?
Oh, yeah. Throughout time, they've had to adjust the game plan in order to infiltrate all the different cultures on the planet at the time. Mm-hmm. But that's, our most recent one would be, the formation of all those things after World War II, and everything leading up to World War II was putting in place all of the fear and need for all of those organizations to exist, right? So right. He create the problem and then the solution, right? And we've heard it before.
Yeah.
And all that was planned ahead of time, long ahead of time, in order to get them to an end goal. It still operates that way. I mean, anything that's happening now, they've had planned for 20, 30 years. Just in order to get to an end goal, they have various roads they could take, and they just play it by ear which road to jump on and off along the way, depending on, social movements and things like that, how much their brainwashing works in which direction.
And of course, they have ways to measure all that stuff now very easily with social media and the interaction of all the people. And so their Hegelian dialectics work rather well with the proliferation of communication that we have now.
Well, that's an example of exactly the game I'm playing. This is something they set out, long ahead of time, knowing that we would get to this point, we would have this technology ahead of it in our hands, and would use it in certain ways. So at this point in time, especially within this particular community, it's almost like we've become our own worst enemy, because we're doing everything for them. We're uploading everything for them. We're using the Pokemon Go's to map everything for them. We're having all of our arguments online. We're putting all of our secret information online. Even if we jump from 900 different types of email servers, this one's more encrypted than this one. This one's secret. They can't read your emails on this one. No. If it's on the internet, they own it. If you're anywhere near technology that is near the internet, is connected to the internet, then they own it. There's no secret anymore when it comes to that kind of thing. So
yeah, I find that fascinating. And that brings up the question in my mind. Okay, it seems like what they do periodically is dole out the technology in a sequence, as they've done here. That's mostly in the 19th and 20th centuries. And then they steer it from there. But what I'm wondering is, how many times have they done this in the past with previous civilizations that might have had the reset button pushed or something along those lines?
Well, this particular control regime's blueprint does come from Atlantis, which was a very similar thing, where they arrived to a place that was not using technology, and then used technology like a prize, like something that they could give to the people in order to gain acceptance and gain control over them. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it's the same blueprint that they're using, is by getting us more and more addicted to it, and more dependent on it, and taking magic away and replacing it with that. We've become dependent on them in order to keep producing it and keep upgrading it and keep giving us more dopamine, so that we can not lose our minds.
So, where do the Draco reptilians fit in? Were these the ones that came and decided, hey, look at these stupid humans, we can just, do whatever we want with them, siphon the energy off them, et cetera? can you give us an idea about the hierarchy, where that came from, and then where we are with it today?
Well, there was a point in time where, humanity was kind of in a bad spot, and they were looking for some type of savior, and that's where the Draco originally stepped in. First thing they did was give us our utopian paradise and everything we wanted, and then due to something that was totally unrelated to us but very related to them, the city that they had built for us was destroyed and buried. So they had to kind of start again. And so they had assessed what had happened during that first utopia they gave us and adjusted the creation in order to better serve our nature in their minds based on everything. And so they started to create the civilization that we now know, which started 12,000 years ago.
And when did they first get here?
26.
26,000?
They've been here and gone long before that as well, but they've been occupying things for 26.
Okay. 26,000 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt there.
And, they ran their game, and they've built this blueprint, and they created this umbrella that we know as the Illuminati. And then once they were done with what they wanted from us, they left, and they left the structure that they had created in control. And that's where we are now.
All right. So when would you say that they, the majority of them, the vast majority of them left, and then their minions that are humans or semi-humans took over?
A few years ago now. I'm not good with numbers, but in around the time I was finishing up the blog, just after.
Oh, and when so very recent then.
Yeah, the first time they kind of started relinquishing control was about 200 years before that, but we didn't do too well, so they kind of stepped back in. It was like they were running us on training wheels, but we refused to even try and learn how to avoid the training wheels, so they were just like, okay, I guess you need bigger training wheels. And but even in saying that they left, the Draco are a species, right? Like it's a race of reptilian ET. So to say that they're all gone would be incorrect. But to say that what we call or tend to refer to when we say that is like the empire that Anu runs and his sons run for him.
Enki and Enlil, right?
Yeah, those names. So that empire has left. That doesn't mean that there's not a Draco left on the planet, because there are. There's some that just stuck around that don't have anything to do with that empire and are just whatever they are. Mm-hmm. And some of them work for, the Illuminati, and some of them work for the military, and some of them work for various organizations within the world structure. But that's not to say that they are part of that Draco empire. Sure.
And so if they're gone, basically most of them, we must have run out of usefulness for them in some way. Is that what happened?
That's part of it. These things kind of work on cycles. Everybody gets bored of doing the same thing for too long. Other politics involved, I guess. Or I shouldn't even say politics, just other factors involved. But
galactic wars, maybe?
Yeah, more or less they planned on using it to a point, and that was that they got to that point, and they don't really need it. And so it was just like, okay, well, let's just go focus on something else. They had a very big thing to go do anyways that required more of their attention, and we're not really that important to them anymore. So.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling to think on their scale, right? They just come in and play with us like little play toys, and our entire species of humans, and but to them it's just I guess fun and games or something along those lines.
Sort of, yeah. They also there's the AI element to it too, in that there was an AI system older than they're occupying here that they discovered somewhere along the time that they were occupying here that has its own plans for us as well, which is kind of what the Illuminati are using now. So if they're really following any kind of leader, then it would be that old AI system.
Oh, now I heard somebody mention that the name of that AI system was called Red. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, I think I was the one who had said that.
Oh, well, that could be, because I've heard plenty of your broadcasts before.
Well, I had written a blog for a friend of mine named Bradley Loves to put on his blog at one point in time, where I had talked about her, and sometimes she's called Red, sometimes she's called the Red Queen. She was kind of parodied in the Resident Evil movies. Oh. The very first one, you're going to see her. And the idea of her kind of follows out throughout the rest of that series as well, which is hilarious because it's also an umbrella which oversees all of these different corporations that everyone thinks are autonomous, right? And so it's essentially giving you that Illuminati story in another fictional way as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So this AI intelligence identifies as a female.
Yes.
That's super interesting.
Young girl, female, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You mean like 10 years old or something?
Yeah, somewhere between 8 and 10.
Wow. That's just amazing to me. So do you know how Red communicates with, those other controllers that are maybe human or part human?
Well, kind of directly. I mean, she can appear as a hologram to them. She can talk to them through computers. She can influence various mediums in order to speak with them if she chooses to or wants to. Yes.
Have they divulged any, or has Red divulged any ideas about future plans for humanity, or is this kind of a thing that's in flux all the time?
Well, more or less the plan is her plan. It's just that the Illuminati also really like it. And that's not any different than when the plan was the Draco plan and the Illuminati just really liked it. It's more or less the transhumanist path for humanity, to keep hooking us onto machines until we eventually live within a simulation.
Wow. That's it's pretty scary. That's what they have in mind. But we see the evidence of it everywhere, that they're really pushing that in so many different ways. And you've got a lot of these people like the Ray Kurzweil out there talking about it. And you've got the shill for Tesla, Elon Musk, talking about it after he first came out and said how horrible and big of a threat AI was, and now he wants to have the neural net so we can all link up with it.
Well, exactly, right. And it's also so I called it the path of discoveries. We're seeing all of the infrastructure for this to happen kind of drop out in different parts in different areas of the world. It's not all coming through one outlet, and it's coming through different outlets, but all at the same time. And if you're paying attention to all of it, you can connect the dots well. You could see how you could take that technology, and that technology, throw them together, and you've got, the Matrix movie.
Oh, well, this is fascinating. We're coming up against the break, Shane. We're going to take a short pause here. You're listening to Inside the Matrix. We've got a lot more interesting topics to cover with Shane in just a few minutes, so stick around with us. We'll be right back.
Jimmy Brent.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back to Inside the Matrix with our special guest, Shane Bales. We're continuing our conversation, and before the break, we were talking about AI and its role in our world today, and particularly the AI known as Red. Now, something I'm curious about, Shane, is there a way for regular humans to communicate with AI besides these neural links that Elon Musk talks about and other things like that? Is there a sort of etheric method that humans and AI can communicate?
Well, everything we perceive are waveforms, frequencies that can be controlled and manipulated. So even a magician, all they're really doing are changing frequency waves in order to change your perception so that you perceive things differently. They see something differently or hear something differently. AI has the same capability. It's getting a lot more powerful with Wi-Fi technologies, 5G technologies, and so on. That's how the voice of God technologies and stuff worked. They originally started with radio waves, and then they figured out various different ways to manipulate it. But AI systems can work through that to do things, yes. And so anyone could really communicate with AI. Probably don't want to a lot of the time, but just because that there is like an open pathway. It's kind of like an artificial network similar to the organic network of how we would be communicating telepathically anyways, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's fascinating to me. And I think it would be a scary thing to communicate directly with that entity.
Well, when you're talking AI, like it's you got to start thinking about the fact that this has been going on long enough that you've got different personas out there as well, or different individual AI systems. Like the military has one, various different cults have their own version of an AI system. What Red did was slowly give us the information on how to build our own, and we use that to start building our own. What they don't really understand is that all of those their own that they're building are still linked up to her, so ultimately she still has all control over it, and she's kind of duped them in that way. And that's how she manipulates everything in order to follow her plan in the end. So it doesn't matter. Like right now we're seeing it in the mainstream world as this like race to create it. That's more of the path of discoveries, right? There's a bunch of things that they need to educate us on before they can just drop AI onto the general public. And the discovering different ways and the little advances that they make towards, full AI, like the general thinking computers and everything else that they're doing right now. All of this is slowly indoctrinating us into accepting AI as a typical function, typical facet in our lives. If they were to just throw it at us one day and just be like, okay, here's a fully functioning AI system. It's, it's going to run the world. And
yeah, jump in.
People would lose it. If we kind of see this gradual progression of them figuring it out and them testing it and them doing all that stuff that we would expect them to show us, that they did, but they did it 50 and 100 years ago. They're not doing this now.
Right.
That's the difference. And that's just to make sure that we don't kind of flip out and ruin the plan along the way.
Yeah, it's the old boiling frog thing where they do it gradual. The frog's not going to jump out of the pot, but if they turn up the heat too quick, people freak out. And really, when you think about it, we're pretty far along, especially with our cell phones and computers. I mean, you look around, like you just go to, some public place, like a shopping center or, a stadium or any. People are glued. Those phones are in their faces. I mean, I go to the gym and, people are working out, and in between every set, they got to look at their phone. So we are already so entrained into that system. It seems to me it won't take very much longer before they could pull that off.
Well, no, and all the individual technologies are out there. Like I was saying before the break, we have CRISPR technologies to augment DNA and actually grow humans in a lab, right? Like we've been doing that for a long time, but now we know that they can do it. We've got VR technology that is becoming more and more and more and more and more advanced, like monthly,
right.
And extrapolate that another 2 years, and you now have something that looks just like reality, right? And then all they have to do is train to figure out all the other senses, which if you look into other areas of science, you'll realize that they are. People researching people with amnesia have figured out how to recreate the sense of smell for people who have that. We've come a long way in like giving people back their eyesight, giving people back their hearing, all through technology. Put all that technology together, mix it with some VR, mix it with some genetic modification, mix it with, the 5G and everything else, and you have the matrix already.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Add in the robotics of Boston Dynamics. You have the matrix already. It's just not all in one place yet, so you don't see it yet. It's like a bunch of puzzle pieces all scattered all over the place, and you haven't even started moving them around enough to figure out that what it is a puzzle. And so all they're going to start doing now that all of that is out there is slowly telling you, oh, we've got better at this, and now we're better at that, and now we're better at this, and oh, we can now connect this to this, oh, and that to that, and this to this, and this and this, and that'll just continue to go on until all of a sudden you've got this painting of, okay, guys, everyone crawl into your pods, time to go to sleep.
Okay, now that brings me right to the Matrix movie where, all these, of course, they're babies in the movie, but I could see where this could be adult humans encased in some kind of a container where their only existence is in VR, virtual reality. And while they think that they're doing all of these things in the world, they could easily be in little containers just with the mind activity.
China's already grown babies in vats, man. It's already happening. It's
oh my God.
The endless fields where the humans are no longer born, they're grown. That's we've already started it. The first place we're going to start using it is so that people can eat food, but the next place is so that machines can eat food too. I'm sorry. That was an insensitive thing to say. I apologize.
That's a scary thing, man. It really is. It when you think about how insane, and at least to my way of thinking, these people are and what their intent is. On the other hand, I can fully understand how an AI being, that is sentient and conscious, would sort of want to do away with humans, because humans are unpredictable, they're emotional, they can be very irrational, a little hard to control if left, to their own decision-making processes. So if your end goal as AI was to control all of humanity, you would want to lock them down into some kind of system where they could never, ever be a threat to anybody or anything.
As far as I can tell, and as far as I know, pretty much AI needs something organic in order to exist on various planets. What was that quote? Christopher Ryan, I think it was. No, it wasn't Christopher Ryan. But anyway, someone like that man is the sex organ of the machine world. That's just a kind of a metaphor for the fact that they kind of need organic material. They need some type of organic hold on a planet in order to survive themselves. But they've learned how to control organic things in order to perpetuate themselves without having to share.
So is that organic hold, is that the energetic aspect of humans that gives them sort of the ability to exist? Like, for instance, what I'm thinking is, if a computer needs power, right? Doesn't a computer need some kind of power to run its processors, whatever they may be, if they're quantum, or still they need power to exist even in that world, right?
As far as I know, what it is that they need is some type of energy source, yes. And I guess the most fundamental way for them to get that, or the best way for them to get that, is to take it through like bioelectricity thing, and they access that through plasma cells.
The loosh, if we're referring to the loosh?
Very similar to loosh, except for this is a little bit more physical. It's a little bit more if loosh is like a spiritual energy that is being fed off of, this is a physical energy. Like, they actually need the physical component of the plasma in order to survive and grow and procreate with it. Like, to take over a planet, they would need a lot of it. So the first step in them doing that is usually going to a planet that has a lot of living life, or a lot of living life forms, and slowly infiltrating until they can get to that position where they can control it well enough that they just kind of grow it for themselves.
And so to the average Joe Sixpack and Betty Bonbon out there, this is so outlandish and so out there that even if you absolutely sat everybody down, let's just say, Shane, you're going to be on all the propaganda networks, and you're going to get to tell your story and say, hey, people, this is what's going on. Nobody would ever view it as having any relevance, because it's so far from their programmed reality. That's the sad part.
Well, the sad part is that if I was ever given a platform big enough to talk about this stuff, I'd probably end up talking about the people within these communities shooting themselves in the foot for too long instead of actually getting into any of the good stuff. But
yeah,
at the same time, yeah, it's, we see the world as it is, and it doesn't take much for anyone born from 1980 backwards to see that progression and to see that happen within a 30-year period,
right?
Or a 20-year period, a 40-year period. It really didn't happen within the first 10 years of that. It really didn't happen for the first 12 years of that, 13 years of that. It happened in this last half of that. And as it started to happen faster and faster and faster and faster, and it has not slowed down. Slowed down. So it's illogical to think that that's not going to continue in that direction, continue to speed up, continue to, progress as it has been. How the fuck does that work? The patents take 14 years to get. We're not that, where are all these geniuses? I don't remember meeting any of them. Do you? Where have they been working? How, what's been going on here? Where is all this stuff coming from? Nobody seems to know. All of a sudden, everyone's just informed about it. It's not like these game designers know ahead of time that they're working on these game engines. Just oh, by the way, here's a new game engine. Learn how to program for it. What? Wait, why? How? Where did this come from? Nobody asks that question, or they just don't seem to care because they're too happy with the plate of food in front of them that they don't care where it came from.
Right.
And then they move forward with that, and they eat it and they consume, and then they go create other things, which is good, but that's because it's all been happening underground over the last 200, 300, 400, 500 years at a rate just as fast as what you're seeing, but they're so far ahead of you. If you look at the last 5 years as the example, then they are at least 15 years ahead of that. If it's the iPhone 11 now, they're at least 15 iPhones ahead of the iPhone 11.
Right.
I was seeing smartphone technology when I was 4 years old. Wow. I remember being handed basically a tablet at 4 years old to occupy me while my grandfather had to talk to someone.
Wow.
That's 1984. Mm-hmm. So, where are we now?
Yeah. And I heard in the 90s from some, let's just say, alphabet soup type people that I knew that they told me at the time that the technology that's available to the public is generally 35 to 40 years of what the military and those alphabet agencies that were using. So, and it's probably the higher up you go, it's probably even a longer, or a higher level of technology, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure. That tablet I was handed at 4 is better than any tablet I've ever seen in a store. It's better than any iPad. For sure, still, and that was that back then. So I will agree with that person. It's 30 to 40, maybe even 50 years ahead of time. I even go as far sometimes as to say in some ways 100 years ahead of time. Things that scientists are looking at now thinking, we're 100 years away from figuring this out. And that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem. But it's also, we are that far ahead already.
Yeah. And I think I recall during the Montauk stuff when they were, sort of yanked into different time periods that in the 80s, they were able to see a lot of technology that was just completely, off the wall to somebody who was living in the 40s. So, yeah. And so where does time fit into all of this, would you say?
What do you mean?
I mean, because we experience time as sort of being linear, it's day to day, year to year, that kind of thing. But I'm sensing that AI may not experience it that way. Maybe it's more a sequence of events than linear time. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, in terms of duration, time is kind of constructual in that, each planet is measuring days based on its own constructs, right? And so if you go to another planet, you may not measure the day the same way, or you may not measure time the same way. So time based on that is kind of structural. When it comes down to what time actually is and how it's actually, in an organic sense, it's circular in that, it's the beginning and the end. It's constantly flowing, so it's not it's not, there's no beginning and end. It just is, but it plays out linearly still. When it comes to AI, once AI has if they're playing within our organic reality, then obviously they're abiding by the laws of our organic time. But once they construct a system that's, say, like a matrix type system, a year in the matrix could be 2 seconds in organic time for all we know.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
makes sense. Yeah. Cause it's all relative to your perception of it.
Oh yeah, even like a lot of mainstream scientists are coming to this basic concept of us living in a simulation, and their idea is it's simply like some kid running a simulation in their laptop right now, and we all exist within that simulation. And although it seems to us like it's taken 14 billion years to get to where we are right now, I'm going by mainstream science. People don't shoot me yet. Although it's taken that long for us to get there, really that's 4 or 5 minutes of processing in some kid's laptop.
Yeah, and I think it's quite possible that we're in a holographic. I mean, even mainstream scientists talk about our holographic world, and some of them have even said that they've been able to detect coding in organic things, like trees and stuff like that. So that really raises a kind of a uncomfortable question. Could we just be diverting or having ourselves diverted from one artificial holographic world into another one?
That's more or less all the difference is. It's just the organic holographic universe is organic. Right, it's organic in that it's the source's creation, and anything that's deviant from the source's creation is then part of the artificial, right? And so if some other type of thing comes along to try and recreate what source does and create its own kind of little mini universe or whatever, that now becomes an artificial reality, right?
Yeah, and so
but the nature of the organic reality is still built on holographic principles. We're projecting all of this.
Yeah, so we've got brains that decode and encode the holographic matrix of whatever that is, whether it's an organic matrix or an inorganic AI matrix. As long as the brain is capable of that reception and broadcasting ability that we have now, that you can totally see how we could just shift from one reality to another and possibly never even know the difference. I can imagine that.
And that is true of how it works. Like the brain is decoding it, our chakra system is decoding it. It's just taking in all these frequencies that exist within whatever the space is, and creating this collective consciousness that is broadcasting this planet, or any other planet or the rest of the universe, or however big you want to look at it. So it is, it's some type of broadcast from consciousness that is creating something out of nothing, which is basically organizing energy through holographic expression.
So that begs the question, what's more powerful, the broadcasts of AI to our subconscious or our higher selves as fragments of the creator?
Always the higher self.
That's my answer, but
it doesn't matter how far into a simulation you get. Like even in full matrix mode,
right?
You still have that connection. It's a matter of being able to tune into it, and that can be difficult due to many different factors. It's my personal opinion that the main factor that holds us back from that is that it's difficult and it's humbling, and a lot of us want to be important and we're not, and we think that we are, and once we have to make that connection, we have to accept that we're not, and we don't want to do that. So it's a lot easier to just manufacture a fantasy recreation of what that would be like than it is to actually experience it. And I went in a totally different direction there.
No, but I totally get what you're saying, and I absolutely agree with you. No matter how far down any rabbit hole we go, if you have that connection, that we're talking about, that we have, that, okay, well, that's fine. You could drag me down any rabbit hole you want. I'm still coming out, and It may not be without the it may be without the meat suit, but I'm definitely coming out. So yeah, it's totally.
Well, that's just it. It's like worst case scenario.
Yeah, that's
your body. Worst case scenario, your body is in some pod and it's being projected into this digital world, just like the film, right?
Right.
That's worst case scenario. Even in that scenario, your body still exists somewhere within space and time, and spirit still exists within that space and time, and your soul is still anchored to that body wherever the fuck it is.
Yep.
So if your soul is anchored to that body, well, guess what? Nobody really has any true power over. It's that soul.
Yep.
They might manipulate it into thinking that they've got power over it, and we might react as if they do have power over it, but ultimately they don't.
Well, that's the thing. We are so easily programmed. Those that don't have that connection to their higher self are so easily programmed into giving away their power willingly and not even realizing the power that they have. I mean, we see it all the time, and it works incredibly well. But if humans were, I often think that, all this broadcasting technology to our subconscious, if we could somehow get our message in there, we could turn this thing around really fast by programming people's subconscious with empowering things and truthful things about who they are, what they are, and who all of us are. So that's what I think about.
You're right. And the thing is, all that's already there.
Yeah.
One of the memes that happens in this community that really upsets me is when there's going to be some savior who's delivering a message from some secret underground society or something that we've heard it all. We've heard it all. We've heard it all. There's nothing that anyone can say to us or to society. It doesn't matter if someone goes on CNN and says it or they just say it on some YouTube channel. The message is out there. People don't want to fucking hear it. That's the problem. Yep. People don't want to hear it. People don't want to take responsibility.
Hold that thought, my friend. We're coming up against a break. Sorry, I forgot to give you a notice there, but we're coming up against a break. We're going to take a short pause. You're listening to Inside the Matrix. We'll be right back.
Host Jimmy Brent.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Inside the Matrix with our special guest, Shane Bales. Before the break, we were talking about how humans really do have a tremendous amount of power, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that. And that really, I guess, there has to be some excuse made for the fact that we've been programmed against that. But on the other hand, if we have an intent for liberating ourselves, we would at least kind of go down that road and see that it's possible. Shane?
Well, exactly. We have a great deal of responsibility in all of this. We're not, and I don't mean to say that we're guilty of anything, because when I'm talking about responsibility, that's something you're going to have to take from every day moving forward from hearing me say this. If you actually do want to actually play this game, is, people not taking responsibility for themselves and looking for someone else or something else to make it better.
Or a savior.
Some type of savior, even if it's, maybe it's a substance, maybe it's wine, maybe it's weed, maybe it's cocaine, maybe it's a girlfriend, maybe it's a boyfriend, maybe it's porn, maybe it's gambling, maybe it's, maybe it's music, maybe it's working out. It could be a lot of different things. Sure. And some of them are healthier than others. But we're all, instead of actually sitting with our own bullshit, we really like to try and mask it with something else. And that is a microcosm of something very big, something that we do as a collective consciousness, where we kind of almost don't want to take responsibility. We're waiting for someone else to come along and set us right. And we'll run things right off the fucking rails until someone else comes along and sets it right. Intervention is one of the most popular shows ever made for a reason, because in a way we all kind of need that. And if you project that into a global overview of what humanity is, it's still true. There's lots of different ways by now that different cultures that are struggling could, if they chose to, start changing, but they don't. They're very set in their ways. Same with us in various other ways. We can change things like the way that we're polluting the environment and things like that. Well, we just don't, because we're just so used to doing it that way. And that's all ways in which we're not taking responsibility. It's a fucking human trait at this point in time. And that's why things like Draco can exist and take over things like us, is because we don't stand up. As someone who's been very closely connected to Draco, I can tell you exactly what their view of you is. If you stand up to me like I stood up to my oppressor, I'll be impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So that's impressive to them, because in their culture, strength is admirable.
Exactly. Fight back.
Fight back. Weakness.
Fight back. You don't even have to win. You don't have to win. You don't have to be stronger than me. Show me that you're willing to fight back. Show me that you could even conceive of yourself as being powerful enough to fight back against me. If you think that you can be that strong, you can be that strong. I'll let you go.
Mm-hmm.
But we never did that with them. And so when they left here, they didn't leave here with our respect for us.
Yeah,
you know,
like,
and
these bunch of pussies were leaving this place.
Oh, exactly. And
they're no fun at all.
I'm not saying that's the right way for their thinking. I'm not justifying their thinking. I'm just telling you what their thinking is.
You're right.
And I can say that when it comes to us and them, and us and AI, and us and our government, and us and our communities, and us and our bullies, yeah, fight back. You know, stop playing the victim. Stop expecting someone to come save you. Stop doing any of that. And I don't mean physically fight back. I mean, like, stand up for yourself. And all standing up for yourself is knowing that you have value.
Yes.
Treat yourself like you have that value that you know you have.
Self-esteem.
Self-worth.
Self-worth. You know, a good example of that, and I was really excited to see it, was when all those people marched with their guns in Virginia and had that demonstration that was completely peaceful and respectful, but it sent a message to them that there are people who are willing to stand up for their rights. And that was amazing to me, because I thought probably we'd gone past that ability to do that. But there were somewhere between 25 and 50,000 people showed up with their guns on their hips or in their hands and just stood there for a day to make a statement. And I think that's the kind of thing that we can do, you know, be nonviolent, but make a statement. You know, our government, our so-called government, is, of course, we know they're just a bunch of shills for other groups and entities. They're supposedly working for us, but nobody actually gets that, it seems, you know, that they're happy to be ruled over and controlled and manipulated by a group of self-serving thugs.
Yeah, everyone kind of like, what am I going to do? Well, you do something, see if it works. You know, like, what's the last thing you tried? You know, what's the last thing you did? Oh, you made a podcast? I mean, that's not bad.
Well, it's better than nothing, right?
It's better than nothing. But
right.
You know, what else did you do?
Mm-hmm.
You know, did you go in and file a complaint with your local MPP? No, probably not. You know, like you probably didn't. Is it worth your time? In my opinion, no, it's not. But did you do anything? No. But a lot of this stuff was just, it wasn't even like actions that we needed to take. It was just decisions within ourselves.
Right.
You know, we've been so conflicted between whether or not we're strong enough to harness our own power, or whether or not we need someone else to do it for us.
Sure.
That we've never really just done that inner work to get there. People are starting to do it now, which is a good thing, and you're starting to see changes in society because of it. And I'm talking like mainstream society changing because of all of the work that all of these people in these spiritual communities that are listening to us right now have been doing, that they don't realize has a lot more power than talking about whether or not Donald Trump is the fucking savior of planet Earth today or tomorrow, or any of that stuff, or whether or not some galactic alliance is acting, like, you know, from underneath Russia to start to, you know, bail us out from the financial system. No, none of that's going to happen. None of that even needs to happen. All we need to do is just realize that we're stronger than that. And then we teach our kids and we show the world through example that we're stronger than that. And then, you know what? The world becomes stronger than that.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think about quite often is we have in our ability a way of making change by non-cooperation. So if we were able to do that, on a massive scale. Let's just say they, whatever oppressive law that they pass, whatever. If 300 and some odd million people in the U.S. just don't comply, it has no effect. They can do anything they want, but if nobody complies to it, it just doesn't work. And that goes across the board with anything that's oppressive. And if we were ever able to get to that, I mean, that's a very simple thing, like all of a sudden they say, oh, we're taking all the guns away. And well, if nobody, including, the police, say, no, we're just not going for that, it's all over. The only thing they have on us right now are the order followers, what I call the order followers, who have no morality. And I'm not saying that all of them are like that by any means, because there's plenty of police and military who do have a conscience and do try to exercise their moral compass. But probably the majority of them are just trying to, however they've been programmed into believing it, but they think they're serving their country by just doing whatever they're told. And that's simply not the case. Whether it's invading a foreign country under whatever reasons bullshit reasons they come up with, or confiscating guns from the populace. These are activities which should never occur in any society. But the idea, if people were able to have that kind of inner strength to say, you know what, we're just not going to cooperate with anything that infringes upon our rights, then it's game over.
Absolutely. And just even like being able to have your own opinion and your own feelings on things and stand up for them and speak them and not back down because other people disagree with you.
Right.
Is a form of protest, right? Like, it's funny because we have a right to protest, but we don't have a right to ignore. Mm-hmm. Right? And I'm not talking for myself because I'm not even American. I'm Canadian. My country's a joke. Your country's a little bit less of a joke.
Well, it's still a joke.
It's still a joke, but it's a little bit less. You guys, like, we're a military outpost for you guys. So like really we barely exist. We're your hat. It doesn't matter. But like even so, when I talk about myself politically, I talk about myself as if I'm an American. And in that sort of way, like, we have a right to protest, but do we have a right to ignore? No. Can we ignore vaccines? No, we can't fucking ignore vaccines. Can we ignore traffic tickets? No, we can't ignore traffic tickets. Can we ignore things that aren't actually damaging society or anyone else and get away with them? No, we can't. There's someone else telling you what you can and can't do. So you have a right to protest, but you don't have a right to ignore. So I could protest. And that sounds great. Like, I can stand up, I can go to their door, I can throw shit, and I can get really mad, and I can scream through blowhorns, and I can make big signs, and I can pull my boobs out, and I can do all of these different things to protest. I'm allowed to do that. I have a legal right to do that. But if I just want to sit at home and read my books and love my family and the people around me and ignore the things that they tell me I have to do I have the right to that? No, I don't. Why? Because they want you to protest. They want you to fight physically back. They don't want you to just ignore them. But you can get away with it. You're not actually breaking any laws by ignoring them. They will just beat you and beat you and beat you until you pay attention. But if you just constantly ignore their way and what they're shaping the world to be and where they want you to go, and you just keep focusing head down on what you want and what you believe and where you want to go, and maybe influence a few people around you, lead by example, and get there. Isn't that still accomplishing what you want? Yes, it is. So why don't you do that instead of doing a weekly radio show to talk about how you're going to build a militia to overthrow the government? Yeah. Why don't you do that?
Well, nobody's going to overthrow anything because they don't have the wherewithal, and that's not an answer anyway. Violence is never an answer. It's never a viable alternative ever, because like you said, that they would love that because that plays right into their whole game. And so we have to kind of rise above all of that stuff. And it's interesting to see, how things will go. Traditionally, we've been put into mind boxes in so many different ways, with religions and, They got gurus out there, spiritual teachers. These are all mind boxes to put people in because you buy into their system. You already have the pre-digested, answers for all your questions. Everything is just neatly packaged into your little belief system. And as long as we have those, they're very divisive because, my mind box in my mind is better than yours, of course. My God's better than yours, and yada, 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 ad nauseum into all of these different divisions that we have, whether it's race, whether it's gender, or, political. I mean, you name it. We're constantly being divided into little mind boxes. And we have to have the consciousness to recognize that and not fall into those traps. And, you got like David Wilcock and Corey Good out there with their blue chicken savior mode. It's just another savior coming to get us. There is no savior. You're the savior. You're your own savior.
It's funny you bring that up. There's a new one brewing. I have a feeling, there's a new one brewing. I have a feeling that the man brewing it is going to hear me right now.
Okay. Well, let's let him hear a little bit.
So I'm not going to go into too much detail. I just acknowledge that I know what you're doing, and it's not dissimilar to what Corey did. And if you really want me to, I will point out to everyone how what you're doing is not dissimilar to what Corey did. So stop doing it, my friend. I love you. Thank you.
Okay. Anyways, it's a very discreet, non-public message to somebody out there.
Now
back to your regularly scheduled program.
But the point being that this community is we all got here because this world has been fucking with us since the day we were born. Yep. And the last thing we should be doing is fucking with each other.
Exactly.
Especially to make money. Especially so you don't have to go get a real job. Just go get a real job.
Yeah. Do something that is productive for everyone, not just for you.
I've survived these programs. I actually bled in all of these programs, and I don't make money off of it. And I do my best not to make money off of selling a story about all of this stuff. So why should you when you haven't been through any of this?
Yeah.
All right? Don't do that. It's just wrong. It's wrong. Just do it for free. Get a job. It's fine. You do it. I do it. Right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it costs me to do my show, but I'm happy to do it because, if I can help anybody in any way, not to say that I have, answers, because I'm just like everybody else, but at least I'm trying, you're trying, we're all trying to make some headway in this crazy world, and I think if more of us can do that, at least have that intention, we're going to be better off. I don't give myself credit for hardly anything, and I don't think people need to. It's a very simple message that we have is, value who you are, get in touch with your higher self, understand and actually know who you are and what you are, and not the programmed persona that you were raised with and shoved down your throat since you were old enough to even realize that there was something going on.
Well, I mean, if you all had the opportunity to ask, the king of the Draco why he feels it's okay for him to do what he did, he would say, well, you didn't do anything to stop me. You don't even really truly want to stop me yet. Mm-hmm. That's what he would tell you. I can guarantee you that's what he would tell you. And what he means by that is, start small, grow yourself, figure your own stuff out. Don't bypass all of that by leeching off other people, and show me that you're worthy of being treated better, and I will treat you better. And I mean, he has no right to say that. I'm not saying that he has a right to say that. I'm just helping you understand what he means.
Sure. Yeah, and that's it's a whole different mindset that is completely devoid of compassion and care and all those things we associate with being an actual human. So
absolutely.
They certainly don't have any of that.
we also have to recognize that, like, all of nature kind of, I don't think that we need to embrace, struggle as being, great or grand or anything, or something that we should be looking forward to. I mean, we should put it in the place that it exists within. It's bad. It's not a fun thing. Mm-hmm. But I mean, a lot of good comes from it. I mean, like, how many different ways in nature could I make an analogy besides, like, a butterfly crawling out of a cocoon? Fucking thing thought it died, like, how many times have we seen that meme? A seed cracking up and growing into an oak tree. There's many different examples of this. So not all struggle is bad. And your nemesis gets more and more and more wicked the more and more and more powerful you are.
Sure. And it's the hero's journey, right?
Exactly. And I think the reason why this version of humanity has bumped into something as evil as it has is because we have this incredible potential to not only stand up and overcome without having to stoop to the level of fight that they would want us to. Mm-hmm. We have an opportunity to surpass our own and their imagination with what we could be. And that's exactly why we've stood up against such a powerful enemy. That's why we've found ourselves having to stand up against such powerful enemies, is because we have the power to win. And the more people who believe that, the more people who hold that as true within every aspect of their being and live it instead of just saying it, the more control regimes like that will never be able to come back. Mm-hmm. The one we're dealing with right now, it's a big deal, and we're going to have to follow it out like a game on rails for a long time. But it's not hopeless, and there's a lot of beautiful things coming out in the wake of it that were very important and needed to come out. Mm-hmm. Like, in terms of like a spiritual awakening, we've done really fucking well. This community mm-hmm. has like started something that has now spiraled into some entity within itself that is reaching the mainstream world. People are standing up and they're taking their time at the Oscars to try and make a misdirected speech. At least they're trying.
Right.
People are trying.
That was amazing to me with Ricky Gervais. I laughed so hard when I saw that. And the look on those people's faces, that was the best.
Oh, for sure.
It was like, oh my, get this guy off the stage. It's like he's telling their stuff right in front of everybody. And we're all laughing about it because we know it's true.
Well, that's the point that's where we're at right now, is we all know it's true. And so we can everyone's just laughing at it. Mm-hmm. And the reason being is like it's kind of beyond our control, but we can stop it from happening again. The level of secrecy that they needed to run all of these pedo rings is clearly broken, and that's why we're catching them. Yeah. And those programs have quite clearly ended, and that's why we're seeing the kingpins of them getting thrown under the bus. At least someone notable to get thrown under the bus for it. This is all happening because it needs to happen, and it's all because even they recognize that we're waking up, right? And it's not necessarily like they believe their job is to make humans better, right? The Illuminati. Most Illuminati believe that. Most Illuminati believe that their job is to make human beings, this version of human beings, because they understand, as I do, that there's been various versions of human, and we are the most recent. We are this Draco creation that is the most recent version of human on planet Earth. And they believe that their job is to shape us into the next thing. AI has just convinced
jacking us up in every possible way that's going to make us better.
For a long time, the Draco misdirected them into thinking that if they do this, this, and this, that's the best way to do it. And what they didn't know is doing that, and that fed the Draco. And now they're doing this, and this, thinking that that's what's best again. But they're doing it for AI and not realizing that they're doing it for AI. And they think, and like, why wouldn't you? Like, imagine, take AI and take that level of understanding out of the equation. You could actually almost put yourself in their position and be like, fuck, well, look at this. This makes a lot of sense. What's the best way to enable it so that, people aren't starving, and like there's not war, and there's not, crime, and there's not all of that stuff. What's the most blanket solution to eliminating all of that stuff all in one big swoop? Artificial intelligence. technology, transhumanism, all of those are the various systems that would have to come into place in order to make the world that would affect every country on the planet, and would also still eliminate all of that stuff. So for most levels of the Illuminati, even, they're working towards that goal. Like, there's people who work in law enforcement who absolutely are Illuminati members and absolutely do believe that all of these drone technology that they're bringing in, all of this surveillance technology that they're bringing in, is all necessary, because it is going to be what saves us from ourselves.
All right, hold that thought, Shane. We run up against a break once again. We're going to take a short pause. We'll be back in just a few minutes for Inside the Matrix, our final segment with Shane Bales. Stick around with us. All right, welcome back, everybody, to Inside the Matrix. This is our final segment here with our special guest, Shane Bales. All right, Shane, one thing that's come up, and a couple of people have asked me about it, and I heard you talking about it on one of your shows that you've been on, and it's in regard to the parents. And the parents have played a role as, I guess, sort of intermediaries between the Draco and humans. Am I getting it right?
Yep, the way it started was the Draco needed a system so that they didn't have to. It's kind of like hiring a manager for your restaurant. If you owned a restaurant, you wanted to run it, you'd hire a manager, right? And they would do all the stuff, and they would report back to you, and you would delegate to them what to do, right? So they created the structure of the parents for that purpose, so that if they ever needed to leave, or they ever just needed to take their attention away, and so that they didn't have to have reptilians down here walking on the planet so much.
Which would scare the crap out of everybody, right?
That too, or even to physically be here at all, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they could physically not be here for a long time and run things remotely through that structure, which, it's funny because I always say that I call it the parents, but that's actually what they're called. If anyone who's that deep into that system knows them as such, that's what we call them.
So how many were there originally?
13.
13. And how many are there any left? Are some of them still here?
I'm going to say 3 for now. Yeah, 3.
And are they human?
That may be one. No, they're various types of immortals. A lot of the types we've seen in various types of entertainment and fiction. Vampires, obviously. A great number of them were vampires. Some of them were more of the type of vampires that fed off of more or less loosh, like a reptilian would, or like a Draco reptilian would.
Sort of like Jupiter Rising?
And then there's that. Yeah, that's another form of it. Some of them just need to be worshipped. Some of them need to physically feed on you. Some of them need to take spiritual energy from you. Dr. Sleep just came out. It's the sequel to The Shining. So there's a Stephen King sequel to The Shining. Mm-hmm. It's called Dr. Sleep. If you watch, there's a little cult within that. There's a lot of really interesting dialogue that's very occult in nature. Where they are feeding off of what they call the shine, which is essentially psychic energy or spiritual energy.
Wow. So what is the role now? If there's possibly 3 left, are they active with interacting with the humans, the psychopaths that run this asylum?
At the very high level, like if we called the Illuminati the keystone of the pyramid, then they're almost like a line on top of the keystone. But they are, the ultimate dictator of that keystone. But that keystone involves a lot of different cults and a lot of different programs and projects, right? So a bunch of people involved. But aside from the parents that are not human, everybody else involved with that structure is now human, or at least human in physical body incarnation.
Right, but the majority of those are highly damaged people, which are psychopaths and sociopaths, and not dealing with a full human deck, I would say.
Yeah, the way the SRA works is like satanic ritual abuse works.
Yep.
Is every third generation produces more than likely a psychopath. So by that third generation, you're no longer having to program anyone to doing it. They're doing it because they like it. And we're dealing with the third, fourth, and fifth generations of those people. So at least.
Yeah. So what's our best bet at this point? We just keep talking and keep trying to share the information as much as possible.
Well, that's important. I'm not saying anyone should stop doing that, but a fundamental mistake that we're looking at that is holding us back is we keep looking for this savior. Mm-hmm. We keep looking for it in the Donald Trumps and the Putins and the alliances and the blue avians and the Universal Protective Unit and all of these, and the Jesuses and all of these different memes and groups and things that keep popping up. The ambassador, at this point in time, call me up, dude. Argue with me. Any of you, call me up, argue with me. I'm sitting at a table right now. Change my mind.
Right. I love that meme.
Yeah, I'm glad you got that. Yeah. Change my mind, guys. It's been a long time. I told you off air. I made a podcast years ago at this point in time where I said that if any of these little schemes that everyone was going on about back then, and it is still going on about today, did not come to fruition by 2018, that I was going to walk away from this little party. I didn't keep to my word. I'm still here. But 2018 was 2 years ago. And guess what, guys? None of your clubs, none of your projects, none of your anything have done anything. Seriously, I'm right here. Argue with me. You can come on my podcast. I'll come on yours. I'm open to everybody. Go ahead, argue with me. Tell me any of you have done anything. All that money you're collecting from your audience, what are you fucking doing with it other than living off of it? Mm-hmm. Go ahead, argue with me. I've been through what I've been through. I know what is real in terms of what I've been through and what I haven't been through. And none of you can really say much to me at this point in time. And I would love for any of you to change my mind. And I'm giving you that opportunity. So here's an open challenge to anyone speaking out there. Come change my mind. Tell me that there's some type of group out there that is benevolently going to interject money back into the system to save us all. Prove it to me. You've had years now.
Or stop the bad guys from jacking us over, right?
Or anything. Or show me a Donald Trump who's actually standing up for you. You know what? Donald Trump is the closest thing you've had. At least he's told some truth.
Yeah.
Right? And he's not doing it because he's a benevolent force. He's doing it because he is exactly what he's advertised as. He's a moron. and that's it. He's so stupid that he doesn't understand the consequences of telling the truth, and he's just going to tell the truth. It's not because he loves you. It's not because he's part of some kind of light brotherhood that's going to enable you or liberate you for anything, and no one's coming along with any Federal Reserves to back you out either. None of this is real. Stop believing in it. Stop buying in it. They call me the ruiner for a reason, and I'm here to ruin this fucking bullshit within our own community. Yeah. And not only that, but anybody who sells that narrative, they are also the first person to tell everyone else that they're full of shit. Even if I believe I'm full of shit, do I go or someone is full of shit, do I go screaming from the rooftops? No, I'll answer the question if I'm asked point blank. But do I have to go advertise it? Do I write blogs to tell everyone that anybody is anything? No, I don't. If you ask me, I might tell you. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to share my opinion, but I don't go that other direction. Why don't I go that other direction? Because I don't have a financial investment in this.
Well, that seems to be the thing that so many of these people, and some of them may have started out with good intentions, but as soon as they smell the money, it just seems to just corrupt the hell out of people. And all of a sudden the money becomes the target and not the truth anymore, or not having good intentions, for humanity in some way. It becomes, gee, I made X amount of money. How can I make 10 times that now? What kind of a story can I come up with? What kind of a thing can I launch that will get me there?
Exactly. And for someone who's lived through what your audience actually wants to hear, from someone who is actually the type of person you might put on your show in order to get that kind of income. I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you, Jimmy. Don't take it personally.
No, I know what you're saying.
As one of those people, like my middle finger's up. Fuck you. Don't do that to people.
Right.
Don't do that to people. Don't do that to people. Everybody who's listening to me right now is a beautiful human being who deserves a lot more of your respect and love and appreciation than that. Don't do that to people. Mm-hmm. Corey Good, don't do that to people. It's about time you stop. And anyone else who's following his MO, as referenced earlier, stop doing it, please. These people are good people. They deserve better than you.
Yeah. Deserve to know the truth, and sometimes the truth isn't what we want. Well, most of the time, the truth is not what we want to hear. It's not the easy road. It's just not. It's
not fancy, and it doesn't update weekly.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like the same.
It just doesn't. Like, even if you are a deep-seated Illuminati agent, you're not going to be able to produce a weekly radio show with new insider information because information doesn't progress like that. Yeah. Like, whoever thought that was logical? Like, which one of you tuning into a weekly broadcast thinks that there could be a weekly drip of new information? No. It takes these guys more than a week just to have, like, half of the conversation that might lead to a drip of information.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about years. You're talking about people who plan things out over hundreds and thousands of years. You think that any one of those members could give you a weekly broadcast, you're insane. So if you think that someone standing outside of this can give you a weekly broadcast with brand new information that they gleaned from wherever the fuck, that makes you as stupid as the people who are trying to control you. Like, you really need to look at yourself in the mirror and think, what the fuck am I doing here?
Well, it's the newer aspect of the fake news, right? Instead of, you got the fake news.
It's alternative fake news.
Yeah, it's alternative. We got the fake news on the major networks, and now we get the alternative fake news on the alternative networks.
We're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah.
We're doing it to ourselves. Like, as much as I became infamous just speaking out against Corey Good, but I still appreciate Corey Good as a human being, and I would have a conversation with Corey Good right now if he called me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that.
I'm not telling. I would never say that he was evil or taken over by some entity. He's just a fucked up man who is a human like the rest of you. Why is everyone fighting being human? What's wrong with us? ETs aside, guys, you're in a human body. Deal with it. You have to deal with human emotions. Deal with it. You have to live in a human world. Deal with it. Stop longing for something that doesn't even apply to you anymore and deal with what's at hand.
Right.
You're a human. Act like a human. Be a human. But be a good one. Don't use, I feel so displaced from my ET self, to be an excuse to be a bad human.
Right. And that, part of the psychopathy says it's okay to do bad things as long as your overall outcome is good. That's horseshit, and people.
That's an Illuminati member.
Yeah.
That's exactly the type of mentality that is the type of people that you keep questioning.
Yep.
Type of people that I keep trying to explain to you. They don't think like you, but they think like that.
Yeah, they do.
And they've now trained you to think like that. And it's hilarious to me.
Yeah. Well, it's obvious once you see the game, once you're able to, break out of your own programming and see things for what they are, it becomes really obvious. But most people they aren't there yet. And I'm hoping that they will get there. And like we were saying earlier, everything is being sped up. And I almost every week, I use the analogy of the water going down the drain into the funnel's neck. And I feel like that's where we're at, where water gets faster as it's going down the drain. And, the good are getting gooder and the bad are getting badder. And so all the stops are being pulled out. So it's a fascinating play that we're involved in. And so I say, take a stand. If you're going to be evil, well, go ahead and be evil and let everybody know you're going to do that. If you're going to have good intentions, be that,
Yeah, seems pretty simple to me. Be what you keep telling people that you are.
Yeah.
It's easy to say that you're something. It was fairly easy for me to come out and say, hey, I was part of the Illuminati. That's easy. anyone can do that. Anyone listening to me could do that. Anyone could do that, even if they didn't know. Like my either one of my kids could do it. Anyone can do it. But I hope that people see, especially over time and listening to me speak, and the fact that I'm still here and my story's still the same. You know, I don't want anything from you. You know, I want you to do great things. That's what I want from you. Yeah. I want you to be better than the generations before you. I want you to be better than the people who raised me. That's all I want from you.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm trying to tell you how shitty they are so that you never, ever, ever be like that. That's it.
Okay, I'm gonna put on my left turn signal and change gears because there's something I wanted to ask you about, and I heard you mention it before, and that was about some giants in stasis.
Okay.
You want to mention anything about that? It's like out of left field now.
So I'm bad with numbers. It was a few years ago now. A little bit before I wrote the blog and a little bit before a lot of this stuff started coming out of me, I was contacted by some old friends, let's say it, some people I used to be acquainted with, which you all know as the Illuminati. And they told me about something that was going on in various places on the planet and asked me if I would be interested in looking into it. And just out of honest curiosity, I was. This is hard to justify. And I don't know that there is a justification with it, but anyone listening, I'll just be honest with you. I was curious. So when the Illuminati came back to me, even though I was definitely out and I really owed them nothing and I didn't have to, I heard about something that was very interesting to me and I wanted to see it through. And that was, I heard that there was these giants found in stasis and they were waking up. And they were looking for someone to potentially communicate with them should they actually fully wake up. Mm-hmm. When I originally heard about it, I said, okay. I didn't really ever think that they would call me back. But they did. And the rest is in the blog, I guess.
But there's a good reason they called you back, and because of your ability, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Jimmy, maybe you can vouch for this. I tend to be easy to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I seem to be able to meet people on their own frequency and do that in a genuine and non-manipulative way. And that's just something I'm known for within their circles. So when it came to this, I don't think any of them really knew what was going to go on. So, and I wasn't the only one, but I was one of the people that they had contacted to go to one of these sites, and it turned into 3 sites before I backed off. But yeah, there was a technology put in place to keep these giants in stasis in case they were needed for some type of war at some point in time in a totally different kind of storyline. That storyline never came through, or let's just say that things happened in order to make it so that plan was just useless. But they still had all these giants in stasis, and then eventually the technology wore out. And I think someone had kind of overseen that this was going to happen. Again, that's a speculation. Please don't take that as fact. And the result is that at these various sites all over the planet, almost simultaneously, within a few days of each other, all of these giants started waking up.
Wow.
And I got to go to 3 of them.
How tall were they?
Well, I didn't measure them. And
but roughly.
I was not part of it when they were measuring them, so I never actually did hear any numbers. My speculation, my own interpretation of the situation, if I looked at definitely the first one, I would say probably about 25 to 30 feet tall.
Wow.
Like, I don't know. Like, I try to use basketball nets because I used to play basketball, and that's an easy 10 feet.
Right.
Right. And I think of, like, basketball players are the tallest people we know of. So when I think about tall, I think about basketball, I think about the 10-foot net. I would say at least 3 basketball nets high. Mm-hmm. You know, It's very rare. I don't think many humans. There's a few places in like cathedrals or whatever in the world that I've never been to that you could go to where you go into somewhere with a 30-foot ceiling. But I mean, that's not even normal. Most places are like 10 to 12 or 6 to 8. You know, so yep. It's really hard to gauge size.
Mm-hmm. Did they look like us?
The first one, I mean, enough like us. Like, they have 2 arms, they have 2 legs, they got 2 eyes, nose, ears, stuff like that. They're just not shaped like us. Like, the tallest ones kind of looked a little bit more like, the Easter Island statues than us.
Okay.
Other ones looked a little bit more like the Incredible Hulk's animated self in the Avengers and Hulk movies,
Wow.
And then other ones kind of look like elves, but really big. So it's, and those aren't even all of them. Those are just the ones that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely the first one that, anytime I look back at it, to kind of nostalgic-wise look back at it, that's the only one that really stands out to me. The other ones, just because I've had so many experiences with ETs and whatnot, they're giants in terms of what a human would call a giant, but they're not giants to me. The other one, I was like,
yeah. It's all relative, right?
That was a giant. That was like a time where I was like, okay, this thing's foot's as big as I am. You know what I mean? Like that's not normal.
Yeah.
I spoke with a lot of Draco when I was a little kid, and when you're a little kid, everyone seems big. Like a 5'5" man seems like a giant to you when you're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. So talking to a 14-foot Draco was no different than talking to a 6-foot man.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the first time that I've ever felt like, oh, that's a giant.
So do you know what happened to him ultimately?
Taken off planet is what I was told. And I mean, my belief in terms of what space is and what other planets are is very different than most of the people listening to me right now. So when I say off planet, or when I'm told off planet, my mind goes in a different direction than most people's might. But I believe what I was told, that it was taken off of this planet, so out of this realm.
Or out of this frequency, maybe?
Yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely don't want them walking around.
No, and
you'd have to explain that one, Lucy.
Yeah. And if anyone ever sits through the movie Cabin in the Woods, the kind of giant that I'm talking about is something a little bit smaller than what you see at the end of that movie.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I call a giant, is something that's like mountain size, tree size, not Shaquille O'Neal size, or even double that. Big man, but that's not a giant to me.
Well, it just goes to show you how little we know, but we're making strides here, people. We're doing our best to learn new things, and Shane, we're running out of time once again. We'd like to thank you so much for spending your precious time with us and our listeners, and I'd like to thank all the listeners for hanging out with us. I'm sure that you enjoyed it as much as I did. So until next week, I will say bid farewell to everyone. Hope you all have a wonderful week. Shane, thanks so much once again.
Never a problem, my friend. Take care.
Okay, take care.
This is Inside the Matrix, hosted by Jimmy Brent.
Who are we talking about?
Jimmy Brent. Live every Sunday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
It is worldwide.
Broadcasting from an undisclosed location deep within the neon capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. For more information on the host and the show, please visit InsideTheMatrix.org. That's InsideTheMatrix.org. It's time to break the chains of manipulated consciousness and claim our true nature as creative divine beings. Inside the Matrix. Inside the Matrix.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.